migrating to Australia. David, happy Australia Day.
Oh, I won't touch Australia Day, Grant. We can't really talk about that. We can talk about migration and the joy that migration gives us.
Happy India Day.
Yeah, let's say Happy India Day to all our Indian friends and Indian clients and Indian colleagues around the world. That's it. Happy India Day. We can settle for that.
And David, did India ever celebrate the day that the British came in and colonised India?
We're not being political this year, Grant. We're not going anywhere with that.
No, I know you're not, but hey, look, Invasion Day. Let's go.
Good turnout in Spring Street. I think well over expected attendances with the rain. So
yeah, but what did the news focus on, mate?
I didn't listen. What did it focus on?
Arresting violent protesters who aren't supporting Australia Day.
You serious? How many people were arrested?
I don't know, but it's so bloody typical. I didn't pay much attention, but
I had a very good friend attend, and I heard that it was a peaceful protest, and nothing about violence at all.
There was probably absolutely no drama. I've been to plenty of marches where I didn't see a scuffle or anything, and then you get home and you watch it on the news, and it's violent militant socialists causing problems everywhere. You know how it is, Dave. So
I'll tell you what, it's a new year, new time for migration. And today I thought we'd look at Tasmania because their program for skilled migration and business migration reopens on the 29th of this month. A few days away.
How many days away? That's only like 6 days. 3 days.
Maths is never our strong point, Grant. That's why we don't do a podcast on accounting, or I don't.
29th, yeah, okay, that's Australia Day. 26th of January, we're going to date today's podcast because it is what we call Australia Day, and
I was talking to a colleague in Nigeria earlier, and explaining to her what was going on here, and she was very interested to see that there was some protesting for Invasion Day. Protesting in Nigeria is a life and death matter. We're grateful to be able to protest here with some degree of safety.
Well, would you like to know what I thought was really good about the Australia Day honours, David?
I think Kerry O'Brien refused to accept his, which is wonderful.
Only him. There was a bunch of them. That was a good thing. For people who don't know, every Australia Day, as with New Year's Day and the Queen's birthday, because we're an independent country here in Australia, we have the honours, which is kind of like the British system where you become a knight or a dame or a king's commander or whatever. So here we have like an Order of Australia, Companion of Australia, and things like that. And the government did something pretty controversial. They upgraded a tennis player from the past called Margaret Court. Now, since Margaret Court stopped being a tennis player because she's won the most number of grand slams of any player, woman or man, and that was a great achievement.
But she's not a nice person.
But
not
since
remotely nice.
Since then, she runs one of these crackpot offshoot churches,
Pentecostal church,
where she's spent the last 20 years
being a bigot, a racist.
Yeah, well, it's not so much a racist. She keeps that under her hat, but she's definitely against gay, lesbian, trans rights, and she is very outspoken. But because her church gives away food parcels and things like that, everyone goes, oh, but she's very charitable. No, she's not. So then a whole lot of very eminent people who were offered awards this year just said, no, you're upgrading Margaret Court. No, thank you.
So who knocked them back? I haven't read the paper. I know Kerry O'Brien did.
There was a doctor who was
out of Canberra.
Handed hers back, and
she returned hers.
I didn't write all the names down. I didn't read the paper today or anything. But when I heard the radio this morning and the news about Kerry O'Brien, there was 4 or 5 other names of people who.
So for those of you listening from overseas, Kerry O'Brien is one of our most respected television journalists. When did he retire? Not so long ago. He was on our national broadcaster for decades. A splendid journalist.
Hated by the government, of course, David.
As I said, made him a splendid journalist.
So that's been the controversy here for Australia Day, plus the never-ending conversation about whether it should be renamed or changed. And that was why I made the point, David. I don't believe that India ever celebrated, British Raj Day. I don't believe that India celebrate the day that the Brits came in and started clubbing them to death. I'm just not sure that was the thing. South Africa no longer support Orange Free State, the derivation of the Orange Free State, or of the colony of South Africa, do they, David? I don't think that's their national day.
Not at all. Not at all.
It just seems crazy to me that but well, mate, do America they're not having a national holiday on
4th of July.
No, on the day that the British sailed into the shores of America with their garrisons of soldiers, are they?
I don't think so.
I don't even think Canada do it that way either, do they? No, it's just amazing. It's an amazing thing when you look at it like that.
And that's perhaps the only way we can look at it with some sense, I think. But to migration. So today we're going to talk about Tasmania. We're going to start
Tasmania, that fantastic penal colony.
We're going to start at the very tip, the bottom tip, and work our way around over the course of the coming weeks as the state's migration programs open and unroll. And what we were saying at the top of the program, 29th of January, it starts, and it's a little bit different to the interim arrangements. The interim arrangements remain in place until then. And what we want everyone to get familiar with again is the 491 visa and the 190 visa, because that is the skilled migration program, and the 491 visa is state or territory sponsorship for a provisional visa, a 5-year visa that can lead to permanent residency, and the 190 visa is straight permanent residency. With the 491 visa, just to recap, if you've not heard of it before or forgotten, it's a 5-year provisional visa that if you spend 3 years and 1 day of the 5 years in Tasmania, in this instance, you're then eligible for what's called the 191 visa. And the 191 visa is permanent residency. Now, there'll be new requirements. So Grant and I will be listing on the website links to Tasmanian government video presentations on what the new requirements are, but we'll touch on them today. You've got to register for seminars. The seminars are on February 9, not run by us, run by the Tasmanian government, February 9 and February 23. They're webinars, and they will explain in great detail what's required. So Tasmanian government's been very helpful, Grant.
I'm guessing that to take part in the webinars, it's tas.gov.au/something.
No, it's actually it's being run. I'm just looking at the links now. Go to webinar.com. So we'll import those live links, and the two of them, and the Migration Tasmania officers, who are very friendly people. Don't know how many of them there are, but they're very friendly people, and I can think of 2 at least. Yeah, they're Migration Tasmania officers, so they're state employees who can present on the requirements in greater detail than we are today, and also explain to people. I don't know if they'll have a live question and answer session, but I'm sure they will. Nominations and priorities. Sorry, go on.
The dates for the webinars?
The dates for the webinars, 11 a.m. till 12 p.m, Tuesday, February 9, and 4 p.m. to 5 p.m, Tuesday, February 23. Obviously, if you're listening in Africa or Asia, the time differences, you need to factor in the time differences. What we're giving are Australian Standard. Is it still summer? Yeah, Australian Eastern, AEST, Australian Eastern Standard Time or summertime? Summertime or standard time? Summertime.
It's Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, actually.
Too many acronyms. Too many. But the story is...
AEDT plus 11, I think.
The story is 11 a.m. kickoff on Tuesday, February 9. And if you miss that, 4 p.m. on February 23. So there's something for everybody.
So, and that gives you plenty of time to chase it up.
Look at so we'll send. Well, we can put.
What you do on YouTube videos, isn't it, Dave? You go down below. There'll be the link. So
we can put those live links, and we can also put a link to the Tasmanian program update as well, if that's of use for people. Tasmania is a beautiful place. What Grant and I have always said, whenever we talk about Tasmania, the opportunities exist, but they exist for a few, not for many. And it's, the quicker you're in, the quicker you're considered or not considered. So it's a program that will fill very quickly.
And Tasmania, the home of the critically endangered orange-bellied parrot and the extinct Tasmanian tiger.
Also known for remember the Tasmanian tiger on the Warner Brothers cartoons and the.
Yeah, no, that was the devil, Tassie devil.
Oh, it was the Tasmanian devil, wasn't it? Tasmania is also famous for Errol Flynn. Tasmania's produced punches above its weight for great Australian footballers, and the wonderful, glamorous Essie Davis. Essie Davis, the Australian actor.
Yeah, and Essie Davis, of course, everyone will know her for the Phryne Fisher mysteries, which have been terribly copied and called something else, and it's unwatchable. The American.
Where was it set? 1920s, 1930s Melbourne. Fantastic TV.
Yeah, filmed around Ripon Lee, mate. Nearly all of the Ripon
That's
Lee
it.
and Como. And that's just us talking about Melbourne old houses. Everybody, sorry about that.
Allocations, it's a generous allocation for the state of Tasmania. The 491 visa, there'll be 1,400 places, 1,400 places. The subclass 190, there'll be 1,000 places. And for business migration, 45 places.
Okay.
Opening up.
Let's have a look at the conditions to apply, David. So
there's some new changes, and they're very important that you check the website. And it's not the Holy Grail. It's not the promised land. For many years, people have said, oh, you've got to go to Tasmania. It's the back door to Australia. No, not at all. Rubbish. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's harder and harder to migrate here. And Tasmania is not a backdoor option. Basically, a lot of people...
Can I throw in a stupid joke, David? It does depend on the tense when you're referring to backdoor.
Tasmanian graduates are the prime category. A lot of people from Melbourne and Sydney who've not been so lucky securing employment have gone down and studied in Tasmania with the hope of getting through the Tasmanian program. It'll be about 18 months ago now, I think, Grant, we talked about it, or maybe 16, 15 months. The Age and the ABC did a joint investigation on employment opportunities in Tasmania. And there were a lot of PhDs and a lot of master's students driving Uber, driving taxis, making pizza. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think a PhD comes to Australia to get a PhD and drive a taxi, do you?
No, and the thing that it's really important to understand, and look, I think we said this at the time, is if you're going to look at the state-based programs for any of the states,
you've got to live there.
But you need to do your research about.
Oh, do you ever?
So if you're going to Tasmania, you're going to be, a lot of the Tasmanian industry is based around forestry and fishing, and there is some mining, but it's small. So
it's very small. It's beautiful. It's clean. Probably the cleanest, most pure state in the country. But employment is in specific industries, specific areas. And also, I suppose you've got to ask yourself this question, Grant. You don't come from Kuala Lumpur or Toronto to study in Sydney and live in Devonport.
Well, it's not possible to do it.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, Tasmania is certainly a legitimate place for migration, but it takes a specific type of person to want to live in a smaller, quieter place with a plan. And this is the big thing for students. They're going to have career plans when they apply.
Yeah. And
how their studies have increased their ability to find skilled work in Tasmania. That's the question.
And that means you need to know what the growth industries and the consistently high employing industries are,
and what Tasmania is specifically looking for.
Yeah, to be able to get considered.
And they've got to if they're wanting to come via Tasmania, they've got to be at the University of Tasmania or the TAFE institution that escapes me as we speak. But basically, if you're a 190 applicant, you've got to have completed a course of at least 92 weeks in a full-time capacity and have lived in Tasmania for 2 years. So basically, you've got to get down there, get housing, get into a course and work and live and breathe and pray and exercise and sleep in Tasmania for 2 years. And if you haven't done your homework then, well, then, there's not much we can do to help you. But basically, the career plan is going to be a make or break for a lot of students. And a lot of students come down after they've finished their course in Melbourne or Sydney. And what they've got to do, if they don't hold a student visa at the time they complete their studies, well, basically, you're precluded from the program. You've got to live in Tasmania for 2 years now. So,
yeah. David, would you like me to give you a couple of interesting facts? Would you like to know what the top 10 contributors to the Tasmanian economy are?
Timber.
Number 1, processed metals.
Okay.
So that's their zinc and copper industry on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But it's 1.3 billion Australian dollars each
year. Where does timber sit on it? On the top 10?
David, you are rushing ahead.
I'm excited. I'm like Big Kev.
But the point being, the biggest industry in Tasmania is a very small employer, considering, because the plants, in the smelters, I'd be surprised if there was 300 people working in a smelter. The modern processes just aren't that big. Number 2, tourism. Again, about $1.3 billion. Now, a lot more people work in tourism in Tasmania than in the processing of minerals.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Number 3, manufactured goods, and that's textiles, machinery, marine automotive components, heavy engineering and mining equipment, and 2 shipbuilding companies. And the shipbuilding are really producing ferries, aluminium hulled passenger ferries.
Yep.
So then we get wood and paper, because wood chips is massive in Tasmania. But again, it's the main employers in that, the main employment role, I think, in that industry would be a truck driver. Ores, so this is actually digging up the mineral, the copper and zinc and lead, which are on the West Coast. Then number 6, seafood. Okay. Unprocessed wild fisheries. Then meat, number 7, and of course beef and lamb are the main ones they're talking then. So a lot of that will be the King Island meat trade. Number 8, dairy. Number 9, other food and drink. The picture for that is apples, David. That probably won't surprise.
Tasmanian apples are magnificent.
And then number 10, so that is information and communication technology.
One of the things about Tasmania for graduates is what we're talking about, and this is the sting in the tail, and this is where people need to be aware. You've got to complete your course of at least 92 weeks in a full-time capacity and lived in Tasmania for 2 years. So the changes are applying for people who commence their study after 30 June 2021. So what these changes are about are not about now, but you've got to have commenced your study in the new migration year 1 July of this year. So the new changes that are coming in don't apply to people who are already studying.
And
Okay,
that means that we're looking at people who
would start mid-year, people who are starting mid-year, or people who are starting this time next year.
Now let's have a look at one of the situations that might occur, David. Does that mean you may have to be enrolled and studying externally? You may have to be studying in your home country rather than studying in Australia, because there's still
Because of COVID.
Still no
Yeah.
certainty the second semester will have
So you'd
students.
be very careful if you were considering study in Australia. You'd be in Tasmania. You'd be very careful about considering study in Tasmania for that reason. People who are already here, will be able to avail themselves of this. But then there's the general question: if you've completed a course here and you're on a 485 here,
start studying another one.
You know what? And you can study again, but you've got to show you're a genuine temporary entrant.
Yep.
So if you do migrate in the course of your 485 from Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide to Tasmania to Hobart or Launceston, you've got to get a visa to begin with, and then you've got to make sure you get that visa and commence your study after 31 June 2021, and that it's a 2-year master's degree, and they're expensive, they're not cheap, and you've got to live in Tasmania for 2 years, and there's all these little catches. Immigration is prescriptive law. Do A to Z, get outcome. But if you miss these steps or misunderstand these steps, in this scenario with Tasmania, it could be very dangerous.
Let me just check, David, while we're talking. University of Tasmania.
And there's a TAFE down there, and I can't remember the name of the TAFE, but University of UTA.
Not going to do a 2-year program at the TAFE. So let's have a look at University of Tasmania Masters programs.
2 years duration, and you mustn't do accounting, and you mustn't do law. There's no pathway for migrants through law and accounting. So don't look at a 190 for Tasmania to study law or accounting, please.
Just having a look. Master's degrees, search masters. So you can do a Master of Teaching Primary, Master of Teaching Secondary, Master of Teaching Primary, Master of hang on, no, these are just masters. Where's University of Tasmania? Where are we?
What's the story with the TAFE down there? Because there's 2 institutions. University of Tasmania has a Hobart and Launceston campus, and there's a TAFE. I just can't remember what it's called.
Filters. I'm not saying here we are. University. University of Tasmania. Where are we? This is.
Once again, I can't stress while you're searching. This is not a silver bullet. It's not a magic bullet. There's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of planning that needs to go into study and living and working in Tasmania. It's something that if you are onshore, you've got to get down to Tasmania and do some comprehensive research on the ground, not just on the web.
Okay, so sorry for no one's with us live at the moment, Dave, but they were before. Okay,
no one watches us live. We're a monument to human ugliness.
We did have
two fat men.
We did have someone earlier. So here we are, David.
Go on.
So these are the master's degrees that are currently being advertised for open for enrolment with the University of Tasmania. There's a Master of Teaching. There's a Master of E-Health, which is Health Informatics. There is a Master of Business Administration International. There is a Master of Health Service Management.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Master of Health Information Management.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Master of Professional Accounting with a specialisation, which I'm going to guess is probably auditing. And then there's a Master of Professional Accounting. Then there's a Master of Marketing Management. And there's a Master of Marketing Management Advanced. Now, a Master of Marketing Management isn't going to cut the mustard, is it? So,
no. Well,
So that means,
basic rule with immigration: the fun, creative, and semi-creative occupations don't lead to permanent residency.
so the Master of Teaching may, provided you're
Master of
doing.
you've got all the requirements to satisfy, and also you've got to have an occupation on Queensland on Tasmania's list, and we'll get to that. Yeah.
So I would think maybe the Master of E-Health, Health Informatics, and the Master of Health Service Management, and the Master of Health Information Management would probably find you on able to somehow fit the list, but we'll get to that. So that's basically
We'll have a look. We'll get to it.
That's basically health administrators. So
The
people
story,
who are running records departments and things like that, record systems in health networks, I would say, would be these people.
basically, the big one where people will come unstuck is with their career plan. That's what it's going to be. How people have got to articulate how their studies have increased their ability to find skilled work in Tasmania. That's going to be a real challenge for a lot of people. If you're not holding a student visa at the time you complete your studies because you're on a 485, or well, actually, let's think about what would happen there. If all applicants who don't hold a student visa at the time they complete their studies must have completed a course directly related to priority industry training and workforce development area. So holding a student visa is a prerequisite for study. And if that's an interesting condition, I'm just sort of thinking aloud. The story is you've got to have a student visa while you study, unless they do a 485 and on a 485 transfer and they don't hold a student visa at the time they complete their studies. That's when this would apply. When you've moved to Tasmania on a 485 and you've got no student visa at the time you finish your course, you've got to complete a course directly related to what's called the Priority Industry Training and Workforce Development Area. Now, the courses related to Priority Industry Training and Workforce Development Area are, I'll bring them up. Okay. So I'm going to read from a list here. Not gaining a qualification in a priority area doesn't guarantee nomination. All graduates applying in Category 1 must also demonstrate reasonable prospects for skilled employment. Industry area, tourism and hospitality. Minimum qualification, Certificate 3 plus current experience in industry in Tasmania, at least 6 months, or prior industry experience in Australia of at least 12 months in the past 3 years.
Well,
Building construction.
That means that they desperately need people in the tourism industry.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely. Go on.
And the fact, did you say it was Certificate 3?
Yeah, Certificate 3 plus current experience in Tasmanian industry of hospitality and service of at least 6 months.
That's a pretty low entry point.
But it forces young people to move, or people migrating to move to Tasmania. They've got to establish themselves there to be able to get the work experience, because they can't just fly in and expect to get some immediate outcome.
But Cert 3, it's not even Cert 4. No, so Certificate 4 is where you may have done a 2-year full-time certificate at a TAFE college or equivalent. So that says to me, if you've done a Cert 3 and you have any kind of work experience in hospitality, you can probably get on the phone or get on a Skype call to places in Tasmania, cafes, restaurants, caravan parks, whatever, and probably got a high chance that somebody would say, yeah, we need someone. So I don't think you need to take the punt to go to Tasmania and then go looking for work. That, because Certificate 3 is that's a low entry point. I would be surprised if that's being advertised in the same way for any other state in Australia.
That's for people who do Certificate 3 and Certificate 4 studies, as opposed to bachelor's degrees or master's degrees.
but once you've got a certificate 3 or 4 and a job, then you can say to your employer, I really like this job. I really like Tasmania. I'd like to now go and study a bachelor of whatever, that would be relevant to where you're working. I mean, that would strengthen. I mean, this is part of building the career plan, isn't it?
It's part of the career plan. It's got a lot of thought and consideration must go into it. Current experience, 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, building and construction is a certificate 4. That's including civil construction, energy and infrastructure. And the certificate 4, advanced manufacturing and energy, you've got to have a certificate 4. Information and communication technology, postgraduate degree or degree. Aged services, certificate 3, diploma of nursing and allied health qualifications. Disability service, certificate 3. Agriculture.
So that's telling you that they can't get enough people to work in the aged care homes.
Or agriculture, certificate 4, needed in agricultural, horticulture and conservation land management. The training package there, let's open up the tourism, travel and hospitality training package. Let's have a look. Okay. So certificate 1 in hospitality, there's certificates in hospitality, the packages. I'm just looking at the packages. Tourism, holiday park resorts, hospitality, kitchen up. There's a whole host of programs. It's a government-funded initiative of the Australian and Territory government. So you're right. They're wanting people to be in these fields because they can't get it locally. They can't get them locally.
Have a look what's in the conservation one, David, because I reckon that is.
And once again, people who come in late, this is for people who've commenced their study after 30 June of this year. So basically the changes where the 190 applicants must have completed 2 years of study and lived in Tasmania for 2 years, 92 weeks of study, lived in Tassie for 2 years. That applies to people who are coming or commencing study on 1 July, the new financial year, new migration year.
And I can see opportunities for people who have done certificate 3 or 4 on the mainland, and
people
find satisfying work.
People have got to have, if they've come from the mainland, they've got to have 12 months of work experience.
But what I'm saying is, before you enrol, because you can't begin this program until the second half of this year.
Correct. For 190, that's right.
So I'm thinking Tasmania is always people's last resort, right, in terms of where they want to go in Australia. But this looks like there is opportunity.
Some thought and opportunity has gone in. Absolutely.
And if you have not already achieved a bachelor, so that to me, sort of, I'm thinking there are an awful lot of students who came to Australia and did those vocational certificates and have not found those the satisfying work that they may have been promised. That looks like there's an opportunity for them to be able to extend their study if they can afford the courses,
if they can afford the courses. Absolutely.
That's always the proviso, isn't it?
And when you do your research to provide a career plan, you've got to show you've got reasonable chance of getting employment. So, you living down there, you'll be able to demonstrate your efforts to find employment, your efforts to secure employment and maintain employment. So, you're right. It's a lot better than it has been down in Tasmania. If you're already working in Tasmania, it's a little bit different. You've got to be receiving the same type of income. This is to prevent exploitation. You've got to be receiving the same income for the job that an Australian resident, permanent resident, or Australian citizen would receive. So you can't be in the position that some unfortunate people find themselves, where they're being underpaid and threatened with being reported by their unscrupulous employers. So if you want to have a shot as a worker in Tasmania, you've got to be paid what Australians are paid.
let's have a look at what the situation would be for someone. What would a practical example of
Like if
that be?
if you're a chef, you've got to be paid what an Australian would be paid to do that job in the Italian restaurant or Chinese restaurant you're working in. You can't be paid $7 an hour or something. You know, the horror stories of migrants being underpaid dramatically and exploited.
Yeah,
That's to prevent that horrible situation from perpetuating, repeating itself.
and where they're calling the chef a cook,
Yeah,
or a or a
and
kitchen.
where they well, they get. I mean, there's horror stories, and we just got to look at. We should do a fair work piece one day, and look at people from particular ethnic groups working in particular ethnic restaurants, and being terribly underpaid by their hyphenate Australian employers. You know, Italian Australian working, running a restaurant for an Italian staff being underpaid, and we're talking about exploitation. It's to end exploitation. Whether it does or not is another question, but you've got to be able to demonstrate that the money is what you'd be paid if you're an Australian resident, permanent resident, or Australian citizen.
But you were just mentioning a chef. What
Chef's a
about
good chef's a good example.
I want to say, what if you've done, what if you're a cook and you've done certificate 3?
You've got to
Is
have
the
to.
path open
Well,
to you if
the
you can get
Tasmanian
a job?
The Tasmanian skilled occupation list revamped, not the interim one, is being released in 3 days. So we actually might open on Saturday program with that actual list. So we don't know
I
what's on that list at the moment. It hasn't been released.
think I think that's a good idea, because we're we're both kind of reaching for for concrete examples. I think
We can't use concrete examples till the 29th when it's actually released. But what people will want to get the take home from this is that Tasmania has put a little bit more effort, a little bit more thought into its program, and opportunities exist that weren't there before. Now, employment commencing on or after the 29th of January in particular positions won't be eligible for nomination unless it's ongoing for at least 6 months beyond the application date and the applicant has reasonable career development prospects in the industry. That's an
okay,
interesting one. And that's the career plan, and showing that you've got a life in your occupation on the holiday isle.
and that's where we've often talked about networking and making contact. It means you have to not just be looking to get a job. You need to be talking to your employer, your prospective employer, about what you want to do in the long term. You
Correct,
need
correct.
you need the prospective employer to buy in to your career plan as well, because
That's
then
That's for ANSCO level 4 and level 5 employment. So it's really interesting. ANSCO level 1 and 2 is high end grad work. We're talking about the diploma work here. Um,
yep,
and that's why you've got to get down there and talk to people, because as you said, Grant, it's about networking and finding a job that's on the list, finding an employer that's prepared to sponsor you, or finding an employer that will give you a job so the state will nominate you, and have a life plan there. It's not to get and then leave Tasmania for the mainland, because you're going to get a 491 ahead of a 190, and
it,
that's the state trying you before they buy you.
but isn't it an interesting situation, David, where
Or the
we're in this the post-COVID environment here in the larger cities. I mean, we're both in Melbourne, so we can talk to what's happening here. Is that I don't think industries are screaming out for people with experience and whatnot here at the moment. Uh, they obviously are in Tasmania. COVID did not shut their economies down. COVID did not cause the kind of social dislocation and unemployment that it did in this state. So
mm,
so here we still have um, I'm tempted to say hundreds of thousands, certainly many thousands of very experienced and qualified people who are out of work or who are reliant on a government program at the moment, which is keeping businesses that would otherwise fail and keeping them going to the point where they're paying staff. Um, yeah, it just seems to me that there is a massive opportunity in Tasmania, but it relies on a lot of enthusiasm and I think initiative.
And patience, and
Yeah.
patience, and patience. One of the interesting conditions about occupations ANSCO level 4 and 5 being eligible for nomination, they're going to be eligible if they're located at least 50k from a population centre of more than 5,000 people in a position for which there's genuine and demonstrated severe labour recruitment difficulty, or aged care and individual support, or the position involves specialist qualifications or experience not available in the local community, and evidence of prior related employment can be provided. So they're looking to fill gaps, skilled gaps, semi-skilled gaps where there are people, where there are shortages of labour, local labour.
Did you say 5,000 people population?
Yeah, what happens is if you ANSCO skill level 4 or 5, you will be eligible. You will be eligible for nomination if the employment's located at least 50 k's from a population centre of more than 5,000 people, in a position for which there's a genuine demonstrated severe labour recruitment difficulty, and that could well apply to chef and cook. We'll see when the list is released on the 29th.
I'm just looking to see if I can quickly find out. Here we are, top 10 population centres in Tasmania.
So it's interesting, isn't it? 50 k's from a population centre at least. So if it's 51, you're in. If it's 49, no.
Okay.
Grant, is it by road or is the crow fly? So I mean, we could dig really deep in this one.
Well, I think we would say as the crow flies, but that means that Wynyard and Georgetown and Sorrel, which is that's 24 k's southeast of Hobart. That's less than just less than 5,000.
Sorrel, isn't that where Neil Davis grew up? Our country's most famous war cameraman after Damien Parra.
It doesn't say here, but I'm sure if I visited the Sorrel Online Access Centre website, I would probably find out. But the point being, well, New Norfolk's 30 k's from Tassie, so yeah, there's not. It's got to be at least 5,000 people. You said, wasn't it?
Yeah. Located at least 50 k's from a population centre of more than 5,000 people, in a position for which there's genuine demonstrated severe labour recruitment difficulty.
Okay, so of the places, so New Norfolk is about just under 10,000, but that's 30 k's from Hobart. So that means you've got that whole east coast, Ulverston.
There'd be places on the bitterly windy but beautiful west coast, no doubt.
Yeah, there wouldn't be too many on the west coast. Actually, none of these. Yeah, none of these places are on the west coast. So you're really looking at Burnie and Devonport. Otherwise, there's nothing else which I would call the west of Tasmania, which has Wynyard. Wynyard's on the northwest, and that's less than 5,000. Not much less, but slightly less. It says. So yeah, you're really talking. Yeah, there aren't many places. When you think of 5,000 people, would a town of less than 5,000 people have a nursing home?
Good question. Good question.
So again, if we actually pull pull the bits apart, you're probably looking at being a cook in a roadhouse, maybe working in the forest industry, actually on the ground in forestry.
I think we need a part 2 to this one, don't we?
I think we need to speak to the people from the Tasmanian, the advisors who, I mean, when you actually pull it apart, it seems like a really good opportunity. But I'm trying to think what hospitality, if your town doesn't have 5,000 people in it.
Mm.
How many restaurants? What's there going to be other than one or two pubs who are usually run by,
A
family?
group. That's right.
So one of the people who is an owner is probably cooking.
Yeah,
or
correct.
two of them. So
Correct.
when you start to pull it apart like that, you're thinking, well, they probably really need cleaners, and they're not the people who are going to qualify for these programs. I don't think. I would be surprised if cleaner is on the list. It may
What's not clear looking at these notes is whether they're either or and propositions.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's and. I think it'd have to be and. You have to have employment that's ongoing for at least 6 months beyond the application date and reasonable career development prospects in the industry, and it's located. Or would that be too restrictive? We'll have to check and find out.
Look, we need to reach out to the people in advising in the program and ask them to come on and talk to us about it.
We'll do that. Let's do that.
We can send them the link to this episode and say, hello, Mr. Mrs. Ms. Or otherwise specific epithet. We'd really like to know how the program works so that somebody can make an informed decision about relocating to Tasmania.
Relocating to Tasmania, relocating anywhere is a big decision.
Well,
and if you're packing up your life in another city, in another state or territory, you've got to. You're right. You've got to make an informed decision. You've got to know the full story.
It's really costly, and look, well, anyone can listen to the start of this episode, and I was brimming with enthusiasm. But I've just had a look at the geography issue and where the population centres are. Now we don't know what the list of jobs are, but even so, when we look at the population centres, the occupations that can be supported by population centres of 5,000 or less diminishes. So
to give local listeners in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland context, what's a town with 5,000 people? I'm trying to think.
What in
Victoria, Sydney, Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland. I mean, because a lot of people listen locally who might be or in other states on the mainland who are interested in the move. But remember, it's got to be done with research and care and caution.
And I'm doing on the fly, very rough research, but this is how.
I mean, a town like Bowen in Queensland, that'd be 5,000 people, wouldn't it?
Well, here we go. I'm just going to go back because I think that gave me a bit of
5,000 is kind of the town where everybody knows everybody.
Here we are. List of places in Victoria by population.
Yeah.
2016 census.
That'll do. Only 5 years ago.
So to get down to a town of 5,000, here we are. Okay. 6,000 in Lakes Entrance. Now,
there you go. I've been to Lakes Entrance many times. Yeah.
Lakes
all right.
Entrance is about 5 hours from Melbourne, east. Kyabram,
Yeah.
5,800.
Okay.
Now, that surprises me that Kyabram has that many people living in it. But Kyabram is more a district. Seymour, many
Yeah.
people will know Seymour as a roadhouse on the way to Sydney. But if we get down to almost right on 5,000, it's Redcliffs, which is just out of Mildura.
Mildura. Yeah.
And then now this is where we can probably get a better idea, David, because they're way out on their own. Bannockburn, which is near Geelong, is just below 5,000.
Great wine producing region of the state.
As is Cows, which is on.
Oh, okay. All right. That gives Victorian listeners an idea. What about New South Wales listeners?
List of places in. Let's change that to New South Wales. Let's see if that comes up. No, that's not going to help me. I've got to go back here, go back here. Oh, no, that will help me. No, we're go back to. Sorry, everyone. New South Wales towns populations. List of New South Wales towns by population to get down to. Oh, here we go. Well, they're not actually 2016 census. Okay, 5,000. Glen Innes and Yass.
Oh, okay, all right. Yep.
Cootamundra.
Yeah.
Narrabri, Southwest Rocks. So Lennox Head and Yamba are about 6,000. So the point I was making about would there be an aged care facility at many of those there probably is, but most of those there's not a full service hospital. A lot of them have hospital buildings, but that there is only a doctor in attendance on a roster working through the region. So yeah, they're 5,000 is pretty small population. So I'm wondering what there really would be.
I think this is a to be continued episode.
Actually, I'm going to just check another thing. All right, now there was a news story this week about one of the roadhouses in Longreach was shutting down. Now, Longreach is in Western Queensland. It would sort of at the entry to the outback, but they have a bunch of petrol stations in the town. I think there's 3 of them in the town, not big enough for trucks to park at. There is one roadhouse just out of town that is big enough for the trucks that transport everything east and west. The only place that they can pull up, I think it's 4 hours either way to the nearest one either side. Now there hasn't been the traffic or the population for that roadhouse to survive. It's closing this week, I think. So now Longreach has a population of 2,970 people, according to my friend Wikipedia. So 5,000. It's going to be pretty hard to have much industry.
I'll reach out to Migration Tasmania this week, and let's see if we can get them on, if not this Saturday, next Saturday, and we'll talk about dedicate the rest of the podcast or subsequent podcast to a full and comprehensive overview of the Tasmanian project.
Yeah. So, have we got any other events this week, David? That
Well, the state migration programs are open, territory migration programs are opening up over the next 2 weeks. So I think we've got plenty to give listeners that's fresh and contemporary. What we also have for some wonderful entertainment value is a Vietnamese Australian woman who migrated as a student and earns her living as a real estate salesman, education agent by real estate salesperson, education agent by day, and nightclub singer for Vietnamese functions by night. And she's going to sing for us. We're going to have our first singer on Migrating to Australia podcast. Can you sing? I can't sing.
No, I can't. No.
And she's very, very, very generously agreed to devote some time to come and have a chat and talk about her adventure, her travel to Australia, her migration journey. And she was in student politics as well. So it'd be very interesting to talk to her about what she thinks or how she thinks the Victorian government and governments around the country have treated international students during this COVID period. I think we know what she's going to say, but I wonder if she's got any sort of intel from Vietnam to tell whether the damage has been done and whether we're going to have the influx of Vietnamese students that we normally have, or whether they're going to go to Canada or New Zealand or the United States.
And while we're not advancing any, we're not pretending we've got any medical expertise or anything, but it's really interesting that we've had a travel bubble with New Zealand open up, and that was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, this is why I think we've got to be skeptical about anything at the moment. Which one did they get? They got was it the South African or the British variant of COVID? They had that appear in New Zealand, even though it came out of quarantine. But the woman came out of quarantine and was then tested subsequently, and she had this variant. So bang, Australia shut the doors to New Zealand straight away, in the effort to keep any of the variants out. So the idea, I don't have any inside knowledge or anything, but I think the idea that we're going to be bringing back international students or any large body of people into the country,
movable feast. We don't know when. We just don't know when. No, I mean, it's changing daily. Correct. It's changing daily.
And now we're all going to be waiting for our vaccine, and now apparently, I read some research from the UK that apparently I think it was the AstraZeneca vaccine, which most people in Australia are supposed to be getting when that comes in. Apparently, it's only 50% effective against the prevailing strain in the UK. So, so does that mean? It just, who knows? It's like, who knows? It's just that thing where we feel like we're back to normal or getting back to normal in Melbourne and in most of Australia. We feel like things are getting back to normal, but there's huge industries which are the drivers of the economy. Tourism and the international student sector. That and we've got to remember restaurants and everything, all this hospitality industry, everything. It's all operating at 50% capacity, if that. So,
and you really see that. You really see that in the cities. In the suburbs, things are bouncing back a lot better than in the city. Restaurants in the city are doing it tough with people working from home still. International students who are, one must remember, the backbone of hospitality and restaurant business in this country while they study. They're not there. So the city restaurants are doing it really tough. City cafes are doing it really tough. Have you been into the CBD lately?
I went in about 10 days ago.
Ghost town.
Well, I was in Elizabeth Street, and Elizabeth Street still seemed fairly busy, but I was only around that main transport hub near,
The terminus where
Melbourne,
the train station and the tram meet,
around Melbourne,
intersection.
around Melbourne Central. So the busy.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So it seemed fairly busy, but I think if I walked along Russell Street or Exhibition Street or something, it would be pretty dead.
Reminiscent of what was that? What was that film with Ava Gardner? On the
Oh,
beach. On the
on
beach.
You're showing
When they
your
said, when film critic Neil Gillett was the person who said, if you choose to make a movie about the end of the world, the best place to make it back at that time was Melbourne.
Neil Gillette didn't say that. He
I thought he did. I thought it was stolen from him.
No, he apparently attributed it to Ava Gardner, but she said she never said it. I think that's how the story goes. She was supposed to have said it, and that it was never said. So
in a former life, when I used to write about film, he and I were at the same screening of Pasolini's 100 Days of Sodom for its release in about 91, 92. And he walked out and I nearly vomited. So it was the only time we agreed on film, but other than that.
I remember all the controversy about that film. And
revolting film. But
I remember it got a screening. It couldn't get a screening hardly anywhere in Melbourne. It was
the Track Cinema. That's all I got at the Track Cinema.
And it was shown at La Trobe University
repulsive
at the Agora Cinema. I remember
Pasolini made beautiful movies, but that one is it's a disgrace. It should never have been re-released. Anyway, let's do part 2 and call it quits. Bang on, or just over the hour, 1 hour, 62 minutes. Part 2 to be continued. Migrating to Tasmania on the Migrating to Australia podcast.
Now, if you've got an urgent immigration matter, don't come and talk to me. Talk to. Hang on, let me get this right. Talk to him. that guy there.
Talk to me.
You talking to me?
We've got to get 4 people on, so it's a bit like the Brady Bunch, where we look down and look across and
down.
Yeah, the fastest way to reach me is at David Bongiorno on Twitter, and then message me, and I'll send you a time for us to talk on the phone, on Zoom, on Skype, whatever's convenient.
WhatsApp's
Facebook. Good, though everybody should be migrating across to Messenger now, shouldn't they? Those privacy issues, Facebook's privacy issues of what WhatsApp. Wasn't there a big hoo-ha in the last week or two about what WhatsApp does with your information?
But if you don't like what WhatsApp does, why would you move to Messenger? Messenger's Facebook.
So not Messenger. No, not Messenger. Sorry. What's that app called? Good Lord. I can't remember. It's not Confide. Telegram. Yeah. There's Confide. There's Telegram. I think it's you move to Telegram, not Messenger. That's right. Telegram.
A lot of people are moving to Telegram. There's also Line, but I mean, then you're giving you. I don't know which Chinese corporation owns that one.
There's WeChat as well, but you assume on WeChat that everybody's listening. So, it's like if you assume everybody, if you've got nothing to hide, you're fine. But if you want confidential talk, then Confide is great. Telegram is great.
Oh, what was the one over the? I think it was it Telegram, or there was another one that Elon Musk apparently said everyone should move to another app because
that was Telegram, wasn't it?
Was it Telegram? And then
I think it was Telegram.
And then the rumor got out that he was going to buy it. Everyone thought because he said everyone should move to Telegram because it could be encrypted end to end. Everyone started buying shares in it, and then he came out and said, no, I'm not buying it, and it crashed.
Oh, I don't know. I have to have a look. Have a look.
I think it was Telegram. That was one of the tech stories last week.
Well, it's been an interesting first episode for the new year of 2021. We've got How many have we got in the can now? 55,
Well,
54.
we have our Australian Immigration Museum episode to come out with Rahini, and we plugged that to be the next episode. And we joked about your dog in that.
And I think she's listening. Can you hear her in the background?
I can hear your dog. Don't worry about that.
You hear?
Yeah. So we've got Rahini to come out. We did have really, really, really interesting episode, but it has been a bit of a challenge to produce because Rahini was was on the Victorian coastline,
and that's actually not just 4G, but it's 3G. Is it 3G or just 3?
It probably is 3G out.
It is 3G down there still. I've come back from that region today, early this morning, and it's 3G and 4G, intermittent 4G, mainly 3G.
But remember, she was actually at the National Golf Course, and that's full of rich people. Only rich people are there, so it's probably 4G. And who knows?
She was great. She was great to talk to. Has her own fascinating journey here, and chronicles in the museum very important journeys of other Australians. I'm going to go and have a look. Grant, we should do another one, a live one there when we are allowed.
I have said to Rahini that because we did have the issues with her dropping out, we didn't get her all of her story because of the issues she had with connecting. So we have said we will do another episode there, and we'll go and do that there, and we'll probably try and bring in some other people. David, I'm going to put this out to the world. Miriam Margolyes is now an Australian citizen. Now, do you know Miriam Margolyes?
Isn't she an actress?
She is. She's a British actress.
Wasn't she on one of those hospital dramas, ER or something?
I don't think she was on ER, but she was one of the professors in the Harry Potter movies. She was in the first one and one of the last ones.
And so she's now an Australian citizen, made an Australian citizen today on Australia Day?
No,
Invasion Day?
I think last year she became an Australian citizen because I saw an episode on Adam Hill's Last Leg where she was mentioning that she was now an Australian, and she did a series on ABC TV called Almost Australian last year that produced
yes.
So you're going to reach out to the people in Tasmania. I'm going to reach out to Miriam Margolyes because I want to hear her story. I reckon that would be right.
And she can pull no punch. She pulled no punches, didn't she? That's right. I remember there was an ABC News item. Now you mention it, an ABC News item where she talked about what she loved about this country and what she didn't love, what she hated. She's quite vocal in her expression of dismay with certain aspects of Australia.
Yeah, and look, hey, we're open to hearing what. Yeah, we just want to hear what people genuinely think about their experience. So it's so that's my challenge. Your challenge is to get the immigration bureaucrats from Tasmania to talk. Mine is to get a world famous actress.
Well, you know,
she would hit me with her book of Harry Potter magic spells, which was about this thick. She'd
10 kilos
for calling her an actress. Because
you know what you could do. You can ask her to do a Google search, and we're at top of page 1, which we are. If people listening, if you type in "Migrating to Australia" podcast and do a Google search, we are the top of page 1. Have you ever been at the top of page 1 for anything in Google? I haven't. This is the first time.
I'm going to see whether
if we've been displaced.
I don't know.
And we are top. We are top of page 1 because we are the only Australian migration podcast on the web. People have come before us. People haven't lasted the distance. We're still here.
But here's the other thing I like, David. If you type in migrating to Australia, the suggestions in the search bar will be migrating to Australia, Google search, migrating to Australia podcast, Facebook, migrating to Australia podcast, migrating to Australia during COVID, migrating to Australia from Papua New Guinea, and then migrating to Australia podcast and migrating to Australia podcast.
That's lovely. I love that. I love that.
So I'm just going to hit migrating to Australia. Number one is immigration, Australian government. I'm just going to see.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm just going to see if we're on.
While you're searching, I'll talk to people briefly about the imi.gov.au website. It's a very, very general guide, a very loose guide. And if you were to stake your claim on a visa based on the information there, you'll be in for some surprises. It is general and it is not law. It is not law. The utility of the Australian government website, imi.gov.au, is the processing dates. The processing dates are the only thing that can be considered semi-reliable.
There's an interesting article that's just come up on page 2 on the sydney.edu.au, so Sydney University news page.
Yeah.
December 16, 2020. Apart from India, people from other countries are lukewarm on migration to Australia.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And understandably, given the way state governments and territory governments abandon international students callously with scant regard for what they contribute to Australian economy, Australian workforce. Real shame. Australian international students are needed in this country. And when COVID hit and the Prime Minister told them to go home, it was a massive, massive slap in the face of people who bring to this country hunger, intellect, money, desire to become Australian, desire to make this country better. We love our international students on Migrating to Australia podcast.
Yes, we're going to have to do a bit more work on just migrating to Australia, where if we want to get seen, where we're not onto the top. We're not onto the top 6 pages yet. So,
but Migrating to Australia podcast, we are, because we are the only one.
Yeah, even just going through this, I'm not seeing any podcasts being.
No, there's none. There's none. We're the only one.
God, there's a lot of immigration agents who have got dodgy sites and dodgy names.
Now we've got to edit all of that out because we can't hear that.
Oh, it's just amazing, isn't it?
I'm just looking at my battery. I've got the 10% power warning. I could cut off any minute.
Oh, well, mate.
What I'll do is if we do get cut out, I'm going to reach out to the Migration Tasmania people anyway, straight up after this, email them and then call them tomorrow and see if we can get them on this weekend or next weekend or one night after work.
All right. Well, I'm probably going to send you a. I always like looking at these things. Do you know what southernstone.com.au is?
Sounds like a band. No, what is it?
Well, they've got a page called the Best Migration Agents Melbourne, and I bet that they're just a company that are going to promote themselves. Yes, they are. Oh, hang on, but it looks like they haven't paid for their
domain.
Hang on, here we go. They have this horrible bloody thing that swipes across them. God, that's a horrible web page. And of course, business visas. Two suited arms shaking hands with a computer and a laptop and some pads of paper in there, and then employer-sponsored migration. 2 people who are obviously American shaking hands, and then skilled migration visas. There's a whole lot of people. Some people are doctors, some people are in hard hats, but they're not Australian. You can kind of tell. It's amazing. It's amazing they use those stock photos. Here, migrate to Australia. Here's a whole lot of Americans.
Yeah, the stock photos intrigue me because even to the untrained eye, they should appear not to be genuine, real photos. And I mean, I don't know, when Channel 7 on the web use a lot of stock photography, and you can tell straight up.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, in stock photography, the general rule is if they're too good looking to be real people. You know what I mean?
I always look in the background to see if there's any gumtros or any wattles in the background, and usually there aren't. Or you look at these iconic buildings that they have in their landscapes and you go, that's not Australia.
No, you can tell. That's exactly right.
There you go. So not like the photos on your website and any photos we've used on the Migrating to Australia podcast, David.
Well, they're all real. They're not stock, are they?
They're all real. They're all
That's what I
either
thought.
we took them or someone took them of us. Or...
That's it.
That's right.
Two handsome roosters. Mate, have a good day. Have a good night. And we'll talk on Saturday.
Yeah, and I'll probably send you an email about Miriam Motorless. Goodbye, dear listener. Thanks for listening. You can
thank you for listening. Welcome back to all of you, and let's have a great 2021 after 2020.
And here we are. The struggle goes on. Happy Invasion Day.
La lucha continua, sem parar. Ciao. See you, mate.